Yeah, that's a really good question. For those following along, anybody knowing that a right tilt saw, the blade tilts against the fence, and so you can have some serious issues when narrow strip ripping and miters with that tilted in. So how do you deal with that? So the biggest issue starts with, obviously, the blade will tip into the saw blade. And so if you go to, you're trapping a little mitered piece in between there. The real culprit here is the fence, not that the blade tips into the fence. And what we have here is the beloved Bestmeyer fence, which is long fence, and us Americans just love thinking that we got all this control. That a long fence gives us more control, but what it does is it causes all kinds of problems, what I call between the blade. And when you're cutting solid wood, not so much plywoods, although some plywoods from China are pretty crappy and they'll split apart, is the wood can either split open or it can pinch. Now this one's not equipped with a riving knife. I'll show a riving knife setup if someone wants to see that. But, you know, the riving knife is not just for pinching wood, it's all for the wood spreading. Well, really the short position fence is. And the reason for a short position fence, which if you have a Bestmeyer fence, you need to make yourself an L fence. Pretty simple piece of material here. This dimension I make 5 inches so that my cursor is still the same. And that can just sit on the fence and we can push that in any position and lock it in place. So now I have what's called a short position fence. So if it splits open, there's room between there, nothing's trapped there. I've only got to finish my cut to here, okay? You can make these a lot more fancy, but I have another saw that's better at ripping with power feeders, so I don't use this technique as much. If you have a typical saw, the short position fence, this is how you would do it. Now this is in the high position, but you can have a short position fence in the low position, which can slide fore and aft, and that allows the blade to be tipped towards the fence. And still use a crown guard, and then use a push stick, especially for short positions. Let me show you. You're going to have to excuse me because I actually made the cut and the camera wasn't working. At any rate, that's the cut I made. So let me show you how you'd set up to do a rip, a beveled rip, which is what is what's being asked here. So where does this position go? Well, it depends. On a narrow rip, you want that. So in other words, let's say we're going to rip in this location. We want that just where about the gullet is. But if we are increasing our width, we want that to increase this way. And imagine that line being a 30-degree angle. And that is the position of the short position fence. So that's the position of the fence. So we're going to set it up. Now I'm specifically using a piece of reaction timber here. Lots of knots. It should bind, okay? And so I'm going to clamp this in place. Okay, and we'll make a rip cut with the short position fence. Now you're probably going to hear it. Listen, lots of tension. Lots of tension. Now notice I stopped. I don't need to do anything. There's nothing there. I don't need to get my hand between the fence. That's how you rip, especially narrow strip ripping. Now what's great about the low position fence is I could have a crown guard here, and because I have room to get my push stick on the side, it's not in my way. If a device is in your way, a safety device, you're doing something wrong. Let me show you some other features. Now, as I said, that's the low position. So there's a high-low fence. Now, European saws will have a plate. You know, big slider saws will have a plate that has a high-low and can be slid back. Some people will use this with their miter saw and just use it as a stop. And so, you know, this could be in a different position. It could be here, right? We could use it for that. But we can also use it for a short position rip fence just for straight cutting, okay? And once again, low position is for narrow ripping so that we have room for the push sticks, okay? This can also be used as a template. So we could raise this, clamp this up in this location, and this become a template guide. So in other words, you could have a little stop block nailed here and then it would ride against that, and once again giving all kinds of room. So the L fence, which is really the short position rip fence, is the way to go. Now just the last thing here, for those who think they're clever, we can just lift this and put it on that side of the blade. Don't do that. I'll tell you why. This is slightly leaning outside of the cut. In other words, the tail of that should be a couple thou at any rate, so that when you're ripping parts, there's clearance at the back, okay? And depending on how well your saw is set up, that should be as close to parallel to the blade as possible. But if anything, it should be tailing out. So when you put it onto this side, it's now tailing in, and you have a dangerous cut, so don't do that. And you're not going to adjust it every time. You're going to bring the inaccuracy of your saw. Short position rip fence. Thanks for watching.